This podcast was produced by Sean Weston Media. The 4th of Feb is Time to Talk Day, and the theme this year is the power of small. And we have small conversations all the time on this podcast.
Small or short, I would say we deal with some very big themes, but in a very short space of time.
Okay, absolutely. I agree. How important do you think it is that we communicate about well-being and mental health, specifically mental health well-being, in an office environment, in a work environment?
Well, I think it's become one of those things that, it's a little bit like sitcoms from the 70s and 80s. You wouldn't necessarily show them now because it's not what was done at the time. And I don't think talking about mental health and well-being was done even so far ago, probably as 10 or 15 years ago. Was it a thing in offices?
Do you think there's still a stigma around it? People suffering from mental health issues?
Well, I definitely think there's a... Oh, do you mean other people's opinion of you going through a mental health issue?
Yeah, or admitting to one, or...
Not as much as they used to be. I can think of something very topical in the last week, because I write about financial services and stuff, and the guy who founded Monzo recently came out... He left the company, he left Monzo, and he actually said it was too much, it was a lot of stress. I can't imagine that happening 5 years ago. Only 3 years ago, can't even imagine someone from high profile as Tom Blomfield coming out and saying that as recently as 3 years ago.
I mean, it's sad that it has happened to him, but it's fantastic that he's talking about it.
Yeah.
And giving a reason, because I guess in the past people would have been scared to say the real reason why they were leaving, because of fear of not getting an employment again.
Yeah.
It's really refreshing that someone can do that.
Some would say, well, it's easy for him to do because he can go on to found another company.
Yeah, perhaps, but we've talked a lot about leadership, haven't we, and showing people the right way to be. So it's a good role model, isn't it? It's a good role model situation.
Yeah. As long as people hear that he's done that, sometimes these things go under the radar, don't they, if they're not in your industry. So do you think from a communications department now, would it be beneficial to actually eke out those stories and then pass them on to your...
I think that's the best way to do it, actually, because it's very easy for a corporate company, to put out a message about your well-being, and it can feel very clinical.
Yeah.
So it could feel quite staged. I think you need those authentic stories where people can share their mental health issues truthfully and not feel a stigma with it.
Yes. And it doesn't matter what industry, it doesn't matter what you're doing as an organisation, it's a people thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I know some of our mutual friends from Home, an agency based in Bristol. We know a couple of those guys there, and they recently did a study in partnership with, I think they're called Roundel. I hope that's the right pronunciation. And it was all about mental health awareness, and they came up with some interesting statistics.
Oh, hit me with the stats.
So they did this a survey, a study, and 80% of respondents said the events of 2020 negatively impacted employee mental health. And we're not being very event-specific here, but an awful lot went on in 2020, didn't it?
Yeah, one giant thing.
One giant thing, and then things that would have been giant had it not been for the big giant thing, and that is political unrest. And, we have a lot of American listeners to this podcast, but and American politics really took over, and American protest really took over. And do you think that a lot of the things that happen in another country adversely affect the mental health of people working in, say, the UK? Did American things affect the mental health or mental well-being of people in the UK?
I would imagine so. The news is so immediate, it's so in your face, isn't it?
Well, social media, it's horrible.
The obsession with the social media side, it does get taken over by the bigger news stories around the world, doesn't it? So, absolutely.
All right, I'm going to give you another one. This is another stat from the survey. I think this is really good. 91%, so 9 in 10 of organisations are offering more flexibility in how, when and where work gets done.
Yeah.
I'd like to hope that's true, and I'd like to hope that carries on.
At the moment, they've got no choice. Certainly in the UK, if you don't have to, the job doesn't have to be done somewhere, it should be done at home. So I'm not sure that's necessarily a fair assumption, is it? maybe after this is over and people are offering that, that's different.
Yeah, that would be nice. That would be nice to feel that it would carry on, because mental health doesn't stop once COVID stops.
How much do you think people's mental health has been impacted by having to work from home?
Oh, I think quite a lot. I think that change in circumstances, that can really affect people, especially if they already have maybe a small home, a large family, distractions, stress of am I being furloughed or am I having to work and carry on? Where's money coming from next? And is my business doing well enough to actually keep me employed after all of this is over?
Yeah, it's a good point. There's obviously a load of added things, isn't there? The care and responsibility is a big thing.
Yeah.
That's impacting a lot of people right now. Having to homeschool and still deliver your job, potentially to the same level. Hopefully organisations are helping people.
Yeah.
In that respect. But then if you don't have caring responsibilities, is there a greater expectation on you to deliver more?
Yeah. Do you know something I haven't really thought about until now is, we go on about teachers, and teachers should be at school or they should be at home, or, there's the tribal
both
thing is both
sides.
sides. But actually the teacher also has a family.
And children, potentially have children at a different school.
Yeah, I know. There's so much unfairness, I think, around mental health and what others think others should be doing. And it's very unfair. I read a lot of it every day. And sometimes I think, you've got to walk in that person's shoes before you can say something. And I think that applies to mental health in any area, whether it's remote working, COVID, whether it's anything. Look, I'm trying to think of examples, but it applies anywhere, that someone should always think about what they're going to say before
they say it.
Before they think they understand mental health, because it's so complicated. I've got one for you. So if mental health is more prevalent now as a concern for organisations, does that mean there's an expectation that your company has to be more empathetic, that leaders should be more empathetic?
Yeah, I think so.
Is that fair on leaders? I'm thinking of Steve Jobs here. I'm thinking of Mark Zuckerberg. People of relative low empathy, but they are very good at building a business. Are we saying that there needs to be more? Are we expecting more empathy from people? Your boss, for instance.
I think so. I think we're all expecting quite a lot right now. It's a extra difficult time for everyone, so I think we're all expecting that little extra from people. And those that are not delivering it will probably find that in their employee engagement scores after this is finished.
Oh, interesting.
Maybe, though, the flip side of it is having to deal with these issues on a much larger scale for people has given a lot of leaders particularly an opportunity to show a different side of themselves. Maybe we've noticed communications becoming a bit more human, a bit more personal, less corporate. And that's got to be a positive thing, hasn't it?
That's got to be a positive thing. But to answer my own question, I don't think it's actually prerequisite that your leader should be the one with the empathy. I think it should be everyone in the organisation should offer a little more empathy to other people's situation. Shouldn't necessarily have to come from the top down or whatever. Do you think it might change how we recruit people in future? Do you imagine that someone in HR perhaps is sitting in that room going, right, there's an extra tick box here for empathy. How do I find out if this person is empathetic? Do I hand them a puppy and see what they do with it? Can you imagine? If they throw her out the window, you don't hire that person, do you?
Well, I hope you wouldn't anyway, even before that. So what else do you think we should be doing as communications professionals to help people feel more comfortable breaking that stigma of mental health? So we talked about the theme of Time to Talk as being the power of small, and this year we can't be together face to face with people. So what sort of things do you think we can encourage and help? How can we help this happen?
Well, I don't know. I haven't read about the theme, the power of small. But my understanding of it now, without having read anything, what does that mean to me in mental health and the power of small? It probably means being more intimately connected with the people around you and not treating everyone the same, but treating them as individuals.
And that's got to be a big thing with mental health because we're all different.
Yes, we're all different. And I think we have been guilty in the past, all of us, of applying something and making it stick and thinking it'll stick for everybody. And I think that may be something that goes out of fashion.
Yeah. There are obviously a lot of people on their own at the moment as well, perhaps having to isolate, or the lockdown measures in different countries mean you can't see people. It's an opportunity for people to reach out to others, isn't it?
Yes.
When you have an event like this.
Yeah.
Obviously, you hope people would do that anyway, and you don't need a day for that. What about in the workplace? What about organisations externally? Should they be doing more to reach out to their customers at times like this? Are they even responsible? Should they have any care about that?
I'm going to come back. I'm going to cop out here and go back to what I said earlier about perhaps it's more an empathetic approach to everything we do, rather than come up with a strategy for it, because that feels a little cold and clinical.
It does.
And I think sometimes these awareness days are passed by. You know, you have that day and then you move on. Whereas I think mental health is one of those things that has become an intrinsic part of company business, and it shouldn't be a strategy or a week to become aware of something. It should be something that's actually in your values, and it is often in people's values to be more respectful of people around them, but I think we've forgotten a lot of them.
For years and years, there have been physical health, protecting people's physical health at work. That's a given.
Yeah.
And the mental side is maybe people don't understand it, or it's not been there before. Hopefully we're getting to a stage where both will go hand in hand, that you can't just look after someone's physical health, you also need to help them to look after themselves as well and their mental health. Make sure that the work isn't too much for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we should round off this episode by thanking our friends at home for supplying some report statistics for us. And we should also probably do a shout out to the RSPCA and say that no animal was harmed during the making of this podcast.
I think if people want to find out more, then go to Time to Change and find out more about how they can have small conversations as well, like we do every week.